Moms are not supposed to have breasts with a past. Sometimes it feels as if our lives are expected to begin when we have kids, as if we ourselves were never girls, then teenagers, and then young women. As if we just arrived in our mid-30s all ready for mothering, without our own stories of sexual awakening, of failure, of grief, and triumph. As if our own experiences with sexuality and our bodies don't impact the ways we mother. I was a tomboy of a little girl. I remember being called Little Feller at the age of 9 while visiting a dude ranch with my family in Colorado. My childhood breasts were simply small dots on a bare chest that could be seen many days of the summer. Riding my bike around the cul-de-sac, perhaps a cape flapping behind me in the wind. Then came the Judy Blume years. I read the book, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, with a mix of bewilderment and excitement that I, too, would soon have breasts. Once I got breasts, though, I didn't think much about them. In high school, I was that girl who was too busy editing the school newspaper to focus much on my breasts. But there was one night during my senior year that changed my relationship with my breasts forever. I was sexually assaulted on a date with a young man that I had really, really liked. I'm not sure if he had any idea what he was actually doing. Nevertheless, he made me participate with him sexually in ways I did not want, and my breasts were involved. I lacked the clarity to see it that night as I drove home in the rain and pulled over to vomit in the ditch, but my breasts would never be neutral again. They were accomplices to my humiliation and shame. If you could see a picture of me in college, you would see a smart and pretty girl who was absolutely terrified of herself. I shaved my head when I was 20 with a No. 2 blade right down to the scalp. I pierced a ring through my nose and hardly left the house in anything but a pair of ill-fitting jeans and an oversized flannel shirt. To be fair, it was the mid-1990s and I was living near Seattle, the birthplace of grunge. I drank too much coffee. I listened to too much Ani DeFranco. I read too much Eduardo Galeano and Asada Shakur. I wrote a lot of angry poetry scratched on the backs of napkins or cheap drugstore notebooks about sexism and racism and homophobia and white patriarchal capitalist warmongering. If you had asked me what this was about at the time, I would have told you that I was an anti-imperialist feminist concerned with subverting the dominant paradigm. If you ask me now, I will tell you that was, and still is, true. But also, I was deeply afraid of my breasts. Latin America saved me. I moved there after college, and try as one might, it is quite difficult to be a woman of any shape, age, or color in Nicaragua who is capable of hiding the existence of her breasts. Your breasts are out there because it is hotter than balls, and you are wearing a tank top on your way to the market, and there they are. And men are looking at them unabashedly and possibly commenting on them or ch-ch-ch at you or as you walk by and around the corner. I took some schooling from the Latina women around me. I watched how my Latina compañeras held their heads high and walked right past the degrading behavior, possessing an enviable understanding that the hissing and the street corner commentary did not define who they were. I lived in Central America for 4 years, and in some ways, I came to appreciate this particular out-in-the-open manifestation of machismo compared to the covert humiliation of women that was so permissible in the US, like the kind that happened to me right there in the white American suburbs. Please don't misunderstand me. Call it machismo or call it sexism. The use of male power to degrade, frighten, or dominate women is not okay here or there or anywhere in the world. But in Nicaragua, the machismo was so out there in the open that I had to learn how to deal with it. I had to get over it so that I could do my job and enjoy my life, and this made me stronger. I remember reading a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt during the second year that I lived there where she said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." Turns out that's true. As my relationship with my breasts improved, so did my sex life. I had a handful of competent lovers in my 20s, some of them rather fantastic, and the tenderness of these men I loved, and the ways in which they really saw me, taught me that my breasts could be imperfect and vulnerable and sensual and loved by men, and that this was not the same thing as being used by men. 8 years ago, I married a wonderful man who appreciates my breasts, along with many other non-body part things about me. In 2009, our first child was born. Nursing my daughter from my engorged and heavy breasts left me feeling that there was nothing sexual about them at all, and fearing that there never would be again. My breasts felt like 2 wet sandbags chained to my chest. This was strictly an asexual time for my breasts, and besides, I was just too tired. 2 months after I weaned my daughter, my breasts became mine again just in time for another positive pregnancy test, this time with twins. Nursing 2 babies at the same time is the most difficult thing I've ever done. I weaned them when they turned 1, which was just last year. At first, my breasts seemed to retain some of their fullness, but quickly, as my milk dried up, the fullness dissipated, and I realized that my naked breasts now looked like sunny-side-up eggs sliding down my chest, which does feel a little depressing. Since my breasts are small, though, they don't actually sag that much. A pretty underwire bra does wonders. They still respond to touch with alertness and pleasure. But the skin puckers around my nipples now, where the stretch marks of years spent nursing have stamped the skin, and my flesh appears thinner, more freckled and relaxed. I'm describing this for you now because I've come to realize how seldom breasts like mine are seen. If I were an actress, I'm sure I would be advised to surgically alter my breasts, to make them camera ready should I ever find myself in a role like Helen Hunt. But alas, I'm not an actress, nor am I involved with any sort of indie porn. And therefore, it's unlikely that anyone but my husband and the other ladies in the sauna room will be glimpsing my breasts long enough to take note. Today, my breasts belong to me. I wear them with the honor and assurances I've come to possess as a woman nearing 40 years old. I've earned their stretch marks and their scars, both seen and unseen. I've developed the courage to accept them as they are, without embarrassment or apology, without diminishing their sexuality. I am proud of my breasts. Nowadays, I think mostly about the role my own journey towards breast acceptance plays in the parenting of my children. I think about my son and what his relationship to women with breasts of different sizes and sorts may or may not be. I think about the self-love and the self-respect that I need to model for him to help him truly see and respect girls and women. I want him to know that radically loving his whole self, the masculine parts as well as the feminine, the strong parts as well as the parts that feel small and afraid, is the foundation for his connection with others. And for my daughters, I wish I could hand them a manual on radical self-love, to impart onto them the strongest possible knowledge of their own worthiness and a fierce rejection of shame. Now, as my 3 children grow into their own bodies and their own stories of physical, emotional, and sexual truths, I hope that each of them will know that their unique beauty and their sacred bodies are entirely their own, that they are worthy of love and tenderness, that only a very enthusiastic yes ever means yes, and that no one can make them feel inferior without their consent.